Welcome to EPG Pathshala. The paper which we are discussing, it's Art and Architecture of India, and under this paper the particular module that we are going to discuss is Architectures of the Delhi Sultanate. And before going into the paper or the module in detail, I should introduce myself. Myself Dr. Shutapa Sinha, and I am from the Department of Islamic History and Culture, University of Calcutta. Today's presentation, once again I am repeating, it's Architecture of Delhi Sultanate, and the learning objectives are Introduction to Indo-Islamic Architecture, Architecture of the Mamluk period, Architecture of the Khalji period, Architecture of the Tughlaqs, and which will be followed by the architecture of last two dynasties of Delhi, that is the Sayyids and the Lodi period. So when we are talking about in the architecture of Delhi Sultanate, it denotes a special kind of architecture which we generally call as Indo-Islamic architecture, because with the establishment of the Turkish rule in the subcontinent, Indo-Islamic architecture came into existence when Muhammad bin Sam made his capital in Delhi in 1193, that is at the fag end of the 12th century AD. These rulers had their origin in Central Asia and they came via Afghanistan. So naturally they brought with them a Central Asian style of architecture in mind. So when they came to India, the types and forms of buildings that was generally required by the Muslim elites were mostly mosques and tombs, what we generally categorize as the religious architecture of this period, because as per Central Asian canon or the Islamic canonical dictates of the kingship, a sultan, when he conquers a new land, he requests to read khutbah at the Friday prayer. So therefore he needs a mosque of his own, or a Jami mosque rather I should say, where the khutbah will be read, and therefore they need the two mosques as well as the tombs for their grave. But not only we are talking about the religious architecture, we are also going to study the secular architecture of this particular period. And these religious architectures, which consist of mosques and tombs, they are generally a large building, a square or a rectangular building, and topped by the large domes, and had a extensive use of arches. And essentially they used to consist of a single large space under a high dome. And that was actually as per the ideology or the concept of the Islamic religion, where the people could congregate or assemble in a large space, and then they can pray, they can make their prayer. And they were completely, these buildings were not completely devoid of decorations, but essentially they are devoid of figurative sculptures as part of their decoration. And naturally, when a new ruler came in a new land and they started to build their own buildings, they had to take the help of the existing or the natives masons, who were used to build the pre-Islamic buildings in India. They were highly skilled masons and craftsmen, and they used to produce stone masonry. And as a result, an imperial style of architecture built in India, which consist, or rather which combine both the existing Indian style and also the new style of the Islamic people, or I should say the Central Asian people, from where they have come from. And naturally a new style of architecture evolved in India, which combined the technique and manufacturing, the styles of existing style of the Indian architecture, and they have combined it with the Islamic style or the new religious or the Turkish style, we can say, with, and both of these together evolved a new genre. A variety of regional style also grew up following the imperial style. When we are saying that imperial style, that means the style that was developed by the patrons or the rulers who ruled from Delhi from 13th to 16th century, and accordingly the regional style has also developed when the regional kingdoms developed. The monuments of this period thus expressed Islamic, Persian, Central Asian, Arabic and Ottoman Turkic influences on their buildings. The very first period was a period of uncertainty and improvisation, as we have mentioned, because the people who came from the foreign land, they had to take help of the raw material which were locally available. They had to depend or they had worked with the locally trained masons, though they were very trained and skilled, highly skilled, but they were used to the style which was not actually the style what the patrons wanted to have here. Various problems therefore in the construction have arisen, and in the beginning they could not be solved very successfully. The arch and the domes were not constructed as per true principles. The arches were simply built in the corbelling system by laying the projected stones one upon the another, and then after laying those stones they have cut according to the curve of the arches. So the arches which were built during this initial phase of Indo-Islamic architecture cannot be said or cannot be designated as a true arch. These are actually all corbelled arch. That means they were built by corbelling system, and then the arch have been made as per the curve. The construction of domes were also made in this way only. The problem of constructing a circular dome over a square building was not correctly solved. Indian motifs were gradually replaced by the geometrical patterns and similar other Islamic motifs. So with this beginning or with this introduction to the problems and solution of Indo-Islamic architecture, we should start with the very first period of the Delhi Sultanate. As we all know, the first period was known as the Mamluk period, or some people say as a slave dynasty, and the first mosque that we see in Delhi is the Quwatul Islam Mosque, which was built by Qutbuddin Aibak who ruled between 1206 and 11 and the mosque was built during the years 1191 to 98, which marks actually the beginning of the Islamic architecture in India. So far as the plan of this mosque is concerned, it is an open quadrangle enclosed on 4 sides by arcaded cloisters, and the one on the western side that is forming the prayer hall. The western wall, the prayer hall, is always on the side which is facing the Makkah, and that is called the Qibla wall. The materials which were used in the construction of the mosque came from the spoils of pre-Islamic buildings, and local indigenous masons and craftsmen, they were employed, who were actually not very conversant with the arcuate architecture. They were more conversant with the trabeate architecture of the pre-Islamic days. And arch screen is remarkable for its ornamental inscriptions in Arabic, which were written in Nash script. When we look at the photographs, we will explain the inscriptions in Arabic, which are especially in Nash script. Structurally also, these are not constructed in true scientific style. Instead of using proper voussoir arch, the arch should obtained by laying successive courses of projecting stone in the corbel style, as I have already mentioned. So now if we look at the photographs on the left top side, that is the arch screen of in front of the Quwatul Islam Mosque. Actually the mosque was built by Qutbuddin Aibak, but this arch screen was executed, rather built, during the time of Iltutmish. And on the top right you can say that that is another view, a view from the Qibla wall or from the prayer hall. The first one is from outside towards prayer hall, and the second one on the top to the right is from inside the prayer hall and looking towards the art screen, and we can see a stone pillar which is of course of earlier period, and generally we say these pillars as lat. If you look at the pillar, the line or the row of pillars inside the prayer hall, which is actually built by using pre-Islamic materials. The pillars are not at all Islamic in character in any way, and the method and the technique of the row of pillar, which is called bay and the aisle, in if we talk in architectural term. So there are several bays and aisles which forms the prayer hall, and in front of that we can see a open courtyard. So these type of mosque are generally called an open courtyard style or a hypostyle mosque. If you look at the plan, ground plan of the mosque or the entire complex, we can see that in the green area, the green box area, which is actually the ground plan of the Quwatul Islam Mosque, and the outside one is a cloistered veranda which has been enclosed the entire courtyard, and there you can also find the place of the Alai Minar and the Alai Darwaza, etc., those which have been built in the later phase or in the later period during the time of Alauddin Khalji. But this is actually a open hypostyle mosque having a Qibla wall and the prayer hall on the west, and on its three sides, that is on the south, on the east and the north side, there are entrances to enter into the entire mosque complex. Now if we go and look at the next important architecture of this period, that is Qutub Minar, which is absolutely a victory tower made for the first time in Indian history, and which has a great similarity with the minar in Afghanistan called Jam. So, and this minar is called Qutub Minar as it is in the Qutub complex, and it was founded by the same ruler Qutubuddin Aibak and completed by Iltutmish. This minar has 5 stories, diminishing in size at the top and very broad at the bottom. The lower 3 stories, which were built of buff and red sandstone, you can see when we are looking at the photograph, and the lowest story has 24 flutings. 24 flutings which are alternatively round and angular. The second story has only round flutings, whereas the third story has only angular flutings. The upper 2 stories actually are later replacement. They are round in section and faced with marble. When we are talking about these architectures, we are always saying that it is in marble or in red sandstone or sandstone, because for architectural history, the building material is very important. So whenever we look at any architecture of any particular period, we should consider the building material those have been used to build that particular monument, and generally as per norm people generally use the locally available material. So in the very first period of Indo-Islamic architecture, they have used the locally available material, that is red sandstone, and also they have used the materials or the spoils of the pre-Islamic period, the building materials of the pre-Islamic monuments which were locally available. So now we are coming to another very prominent and very famous building of that period of Qutubuddin Aibak. This is once again built by Qutubuddin Aibak, but this is not in Delhi. This is in Ajmer in Rajasthan, and it's called Arai Din Ka Jhopra. And as you see the photographs, you can see the building is absolutely different in color as we have seen for Quwatul Islam Mosque and Qutub Minar. This is totally yellow in color. So it is made of yellow sandstone, and which is locally available in Ajmer area of Rajasthan. And if we have to also look at the ground plan of the Arai Din Ka Jhopra, the name is Arai Din Ka Jhopra generally people believes that it was built within 2.5 din, that is 2.5 days, but actually it was not. Scholars have different opinion about it. Some people say that there is a mela or the fair which used to hold for 2.5 days, that's why it is named as Arai Din Ka Jhopra. Or some scholars said that it took actually 2.5 years to complete this construction, and that's why it was named so. But we should not go in that kind of terminology. Rather, we should concentrate on the architecture, on the plan of the architecture, ground plan. And here also you can see that the complex, which is covered on 4 sides, the western part is the modern prayer hall, which has this art screen in front, and on the 3 sides of it, it has again got the cloistered veranda, or which are actually capped or topped by, covered by the domes. So the entire structure, we can say it is a domical structure covered by domes, having a very wide courtyard in the middle. On the 4 corners there are corner minarets. But well, as we progress, as we go on, we will discuss about the features of this mosque. It was in style and construction, it of course it resembles the first mosque, that is Quwatul Islam. It is more spacious and dignified, and the errors which were occurred in case of Quwatul Islam have been correctly laid out in this case. Its colonnades are not overcrowded with pillars, as we have seen in case of Quwatul Islam. If we look at this, the inside of the mosque, we will find that they are very systematically laid out and not so crowded, and they are very high in length. Actually, each and every pillar was built by adding 3 pillars in length. So it is very high, and on the top of the building it is covered by flat roof as well as the domes. So both the trabeate and arcuate style of architecture was implemented. Moreover, the pillars and domes are very symmetrically placed, resulting in a great beauty. Till now we were discussing about the mosques, that is Quwatul Islam Mosque and Arai Din Ka Jhopra, and we have also mentioned about a minar, which is a very unique architecture in the Islamic period. But now we are we are going to talk about another kind of architecture, that is tomb architecture. So this is the tomb of Iltutmish, which is situated inside actually the Quwatul Islam Mosque complex. It is actually just outside the northwest corner of the Quwatul Islam Mosque, and the interior of this mosque is very elaborately carved with exquisite calligraphy. Actually, a lot of inscriptions from the these could be the Quranic verses. Rather, we should say the religious inscriptions are inscribed all over the walls inside this tomb complex. Though the tomb is open, probably the dome of the tomb is missing now. It was once, we suppose that once it was covered by a dome. So basically it is a square structure, whereas the sarcophagus or the tomb itself is situated, and it was covered by a dome with square, which was square in shape. But of course it became octagonal whenever it rises up, because to form an dome we cannot do it on a square. An octagon is needed. So we can expect that the octagon was there. Now to moving to the next period, that is the Khalji period, and we can discuss about the architectures which were developed during this period as Khalji architecture. And we, of course, we will talk about Alauddin Khalji, the great Sultan of this period. And the first photograph that we have seen is the photo of Alai Darwaza. Alai Darwaza is actually built by Alauddin Khalji. It represents a new trend in the history of Islamic architecture. Islamic building traditions actually were more or less firmly established by that time the Khalji came in the power. Vigorous style of architecture came into being. The architecture of this short period is marked by a fully developed style, both building technique, architectural form, and also in ornamentation. We should say that it is a fully developed style that we find during the time of the Khaljis. The problem of the initial period of making the washoyard arch have been resolved now. So we can see the arch which is formed by the buildings or the monuments are completely true arch, that is the washoyard arch, and the dome became very conventional as it should be. So naturally, Alai Darwaza is also a good example of that mature, I should say, the mature stage of this Khalji architecture, which is moderate in size, and it consists of a square hall which is covered by a single dome. Its beautiful symmetry of form and smooth curves of its pointed horseshoe shaped arches generally speaks about the development of the Indo-Islamic architecture in this subcontinent. These arches are also characterized by the bud fringe of their curves, creating an impression of spearheads. And the technique of constructing dome and squinch system came into being for the first time in case of Alai Darwaza. We will explain what is a squinch when we will look at the photographs where a squinch is shown. And workmanship of the exterior walls, also faced with sandstone and marble, deserves special mention. Another mosque of this Khalji period is Jamaat Khana Mosque, that Alai Darwaza, probably the technique of building or manufacturing Alai Darwaza must have inspired this manufacturing of this monument, that is called Jamaat Khana Mosque, and it is actually a three-domed mosque which is covered by three domes which are entirely cased by white marble. Situated to the immediate west of the tomb of Hazrat Nizamuddin Auliya at Delhi, this is the earliest example of mosque constructed as per Islamic principles. The whole structure is rectangular in plan. Three shallow dome chambers we can find on standing on the arched entrances. Each arched entrance is surrounded by carved inscriptions. Inscriptions, of course, in Arabic during this period and written in Nash script. Interior design of the central chamber is supported with squinch arches. That means the arch which is supported by the squinch. Entrance arch of the central chamber has a beam on brackets under it. That means again it take the support of a trabeate architecture. Now, after discussing a lot on the religious architecture, we would like to focus or discuss a little bit about the secular architecture of this period, because the sultans they were used to reside in a palace, and the palace were further fortified, secured by the fortification wall. These are of a great extent and huge size. So naturally, the first fort of this Khalji period that we are talking about is the Siri fort, which is also again in Delhi. Actually, I should mention here that there are 7 cities in Delhi itself. So there are 7 cities built by different sultans, 5 by different sultans of this Delhi Sultanate period, and the later 2 cities were built by the 2 Mughal sultans that we will discuss later on. So this was the city wall of Fort Siri, which was built by Alauddin Khalji. Very little of its remains has survived today, and whatever we can see, it is a huge wall built by random rubble stone masonry, which have a round and tapering bastion at the different intervals. Battlements are there at the top of the wall, and also the loopholes within, that we can see the loopholes for the watchmen and the soldiers to keep the watch from inside, and it gives indication of a fort architecture for the first time in Indo-Islamic period, particularly of the Khalji period. Now we are again coming back to the tomb architecture of Alauddin Khalji, that is the tomb of Alauddin Khalji. An adjacent madrasa or college is also built by him. These structures indicate the extent of the building activities of this period. We can understand that when we are talking about the first period of the Mamluks, we did not find so much of building activities in Delhi, but this is the period when it took a big turn, and it was very important to mention that the development took place, development in different cases took place during this period, and the expression of that development is, we can say, it is coming through this architecture or through these buildings that we are looking at. Unfortunately, these are too ruined. Not all these architecture are extant. Most of them are too ruined to understand the development. Next, the architectural style that we are talking about is also developed, combining once again the Trabeate style and arcuate style. Though we say that arcuate style has developed much. A little far away from Delhi in Rajasthan, we can say or we can talk about another masjid which is or mosque which is very important to note. That is called Ukha Mosque or Ukha Masjid, which was built in 1320 at Bayana in Rajasthan, which is a notable example of Khalji architecture. And it was built in a usual mosque of open courtyard style that I have already explained, and the surrounding cloisters are there. The cloisters are in two-storied style. It was built during the reign of Qutubuddin Mubarak Khalji, and the details of his entrance is inspired by the ornamentation in the Qutub buildings, but of course of not that superior quality. It is a regional version of imperial style of Khalji architecture. Another mosque we can we should mention here in Rajasthan, once again in Rajasthan, is the Topkhana Mosque and the Eidgah, which was built in 1316 and 1318 respectively. These Topkhana Mosque and Eidgah, they are of quite of architectural importance. The lace-like pattern of the stone lattices indicate Gujarat influence. Actually, stone lattices were made by the masons of Gujarat very nicely. So it could be the case that the masons of Gujarat were brought in to Rajasthan to build these lattices, or it could be the case that the lattices were built in Gujarat and then they were brought to Rajasthan to place in this Topkhana Mosque. The Eidgah is actually, I should explain, Eidgah means it is an open mosque. It is only a huge enclosure, a huge area or huge courtyard which is enclosed by an wall on four sides of it, and the western wall of it should be treated as the Qibla wall, which could have the mihrab where the people should pray for their prayers, the daily namazes. So in this case also, in this Eidgah, it is an elegant building of usual one wall plan, that we say one wall plan, and its side buttress like tower is with circular and angular flutings. Now if we consider that we have entered into the 14th century with the Khaljis, did not rule for a long period. So the next dynasties which came into the power in Delhi was the Tughlaqs, and the period expansion of Tughlaq is from 1320 to 1412, almost for a century that they have ruled. The three important rulers of this period, as we all know, it's Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, his son Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and Firoz Shah Tughlaq. But even after Firoz Shah Tughlaq, this Tughlaq dynasty continued for 30 to 40 years. But today we will focus on the buildings or the monuments which were quite important and patronized by these three rulers. So the buildings which were built during this Tughlaq period have made a great impact on the architecture of the regional kingdoms like Deccan, Jaunpur and Malwa, which we will of course discuss in the next module. The characteristic features of this Tughlaq style are, these are the architecture which of course abandoned the use of red sandstone and white marble completely. Till now we have shown you in several cases that the outer side of the buildings were cased by red sandstone and sometimes having the band of white marble. So when we come to the period of the Tughlaq, especially during the end of the Tughlaq period, that is the time of Firoz Shah Tughlaq, we find that that particular trend or particular fashion that has been abandoned, and rather the entire building or the monuments were built by random rubble masonry, which was coated with the plaster and sometimes decorated profusely. Decorations includes inscribed borders, medallions on arches and spandrels. The walls could also be decorated with encaustic tiles. Gilding and decorative painting on plaster are very common. The architecture of this period is very heavy and massive in appearance. Sometimes we call this architecture as a military architecture. That means which express a very virility and strength. It's a very heavy. Sometimes we can also say that it's very masculine in character. The walls are very thick and the walls are sometimes battered or sloping. Squinch arches and triangular pendentives are also commonly found for this architecture. Battlemented necking and cresting over the fort as well as sometimes over the monuments also we find. Multi-domed roofs can be seen on the monuments and tapering minarets are also present. Combination of the trabeate and arcuate system are still going on, but we will see that arcuate system is predominating over the trabeate system, and they do not pose any charm and elegance, but of course they show the strength and virility of the architecture. Here we will find that Tughlaqabad fort, the fort architecture, the best fort architecture of the Delhi Sultanate period. This Tughlaqabad fort is actually built by Sultan Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq established the fort city which is known as Tughlaqabad fort, and here on the top left side you can see the huge Tughlaqabad fort wall, which is strengthened further by a number of bastions which are almost semicircular in shape and built by hugely cut stones. And on the other views you can see all the views from different angles from the top view also of Tughlaqabad fort, and it is needless to mention that the fort is not extant. This is the ruins of the fort, and then again you can see how strength and virility is expressed through this type of architecture. It is actually the earliest monument of Tughlaq period and the first of the city palace fort series. Within this we can see the streets and palaces, the terraces of course, not the extant one. Sharply sloping wall is the main characteristic feature of this huge irregular stone involved in that. Colossal circular bastions you have seen, which is made in close intervals, and a series of loopholes were also created to give you an impression of great strength and solidity. It is the most outstanding monument of this period, and it was built during 1325 or so. It is in perfect, actually if we look at the photograph which is the tomb of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Tomb of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq is interestingly situated within a fort-like enclosure. So generally we say that it's Tughlaqabad fortress, and it stands extant, completely extant, perfect in preservation state, and it is of considerable interest. The basic plan of this tomb of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq is square, but the walls are sloping, and entire monument is again encased by red sandstone. Though in case of Firoz Shah Tughlaq we said that this system has been abandoned, but in the earlier period, during the period of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, that tradition of earlier period of red sandstone and marble was still there. So the tomb is decorated on outside with some bands on white marble. It is surmounted by a single dome which is faced entirely again with white marble. The characteristic of the dome is especially that its sloping walls. The wall is a sloping wall or like battered wall, and it is of course a new feature of this period. Now we can have a look of the tomb itself. The heavy stone finial over the dome is earliest of its type, and it is a notable feature. We should take note of it. The keel-shaped arch that has also developed into a slightly pointed curve at its top. So that is also new in that way. The use of trabeate system may also be noticed in a lintel area. The lower part of the arch is supported on the brackets, which is once again a trabeate system. Minor defects of design and workmanship are also found visible. That is there. We cannot say that is the Tughlaq's tomb is perfect in all respect. No, it is not. This tomb of Tughlaq Shah is an outstanding monument in that way, so far as the architectural history of Delhi Sultanate is concerned, and it is a mark of a new phase in Indo-Islamic tomb architecture. Here is the entire view, a broad view, how the tomb itself is situated within a fortress. The fortress is actually pentagonal in shape or pentagonal in plan, and the walls is same huge wall with battlement on the top and the loopholes around, having only corner bastions, and probably the tomb, we do not know why, but they wanted to make sure that the security should be very high in this case, and that's why they have built the tomb within this fortress. Now we are talking about the architecture of the next Sultan, which is who is Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and he also constructed a fort city which is called Adilabad Fort, and it was built probably as an outwork of the Tughlaqabad fort, though much smaller in size, and its walls are not so thick like Tughlaqabad. Muhammad bin Tughlaq also built another fortified capital in Delhi, which is known as Jahanpana. In this place, in this fort, Adilabad fort, we can see that palace of 1,000 pillars, which is commonly known as Bijay Mandal. On our right side, we can see that Bijay Mandal within the Jahanpana, the another capital city or the fort city of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, and this the system of intersecting walls, which is a very key important feature for the later monuments of Indo-Islamic style, which appears for the first time in this case, in this building of Bijay Mandal, which is actually the palace. Now we are coming to the end of Firoz Shah Tughlaq's period, which was patronized by Firoz Shah Tughlaq. The building activity indicate a marked change in style. The walls were generally built with thicker at the base than at the top, and tapering bastion like round towers we can find at the corners. The buildings built during this period were decorated with gilding and painting on plaster as the wall decoration. Firoz Shah's capital at Delhi was known as Kotla Firoz Shah, another fort city in Delhi. It is presently a mere shadow of its original shape. The entire fort is almost in ruinous state. Notable feature of this particular Kotla Firoz Shah is the appearance of machicules, the system which was first introduced in India, which is of course strengthened the security system of the fort of the Sultanate of Sultans of Delhi. A notable building can be noticed, which is extant till now, is a pyramidal structure on which the Ashokan pillar is standing in the middle. This building consists of 3 stories of square terraces with vaulted cells. Another important building within this Kotla Firod Shah is the Jami Mosque, which seems to have been originally an imposing building of 2 stories. It followed the usual open courtyard and cloistered pattern or style, and entrance is in the form of a domed hall, which is very similar to Tughlaq's tomb. Now you can see the pyramidal structure of inside the Firod Shah Kotla, and also we can have a look of the Firod Shah's palace, which is absolutely in Trabeate style, and this is the Jami Mosque of built by Firod Shah Tughlaq or his nobles, probably Khan Jahani Telangani, one of his important nobles, who built this Jami Mosque, which was actually have a very prominent entranceway apart from its inside. And 2 other mosques we should mention in this case, that is the mosque Khirki Mosque, which is very peculiar in plan, unlike the other open courtyard style. You can, if you look at the plan at the top, you can see that the entire mosque is actually divided in 4 small in 4 quadrants, having 4 small courtyards in between. And you can have a look from the top of the tomb, top of the mosque, that the small domes, a cluster of 12 small domes, are joined together to form the inside areas. Another very important group of building during the time of Firod Shah is the Hauz Khas. Hauz Khas, there is actually, its a house is a great lake or the tank of this particular period, and around this tank a group of buildings were constructed by Firod Shah Tughlaq, of which we should mention only about 2. One is the tomb of Firod Shah, and around this is a college of double-storied college around. Next, this is a very important architecture in that way, having slightly sloping plastered walls with centrally arched openings on 2 sides. A shallow dome is supported on an octagonal drum, and the proportionate, it is a very proportionate architecture having a distinct dignity. Of course, you can have a look of the tomb, which can be seen having the tombs on the octagonal drum base, and around it the madrasa or the college built by Firod Shah Tughlaq. Now, the important tomb of another important tomb of this period is of one of his nobles, Khani Jahan Telangani, who came from Telangana. So, and this tomb is situated near the Dargah of Hazrat Nizamuddin. This is a very unpretentious building in itself, and its architectural importance is chiefly lie in its design, because it is the octagonal in shape. The plan of this tomb is octagonal, because till now we have seen the square tombs, but this is the octagonal in shape, and which is surrounded by a low arched veranda, and everything is covered by a single dome. And it is introduced in India the new type of tomb architecture, which have been followed for the next 200 years, even during the Mughal period. So here you can see how miserable state of the ruins of this Khan Jahani Tilangani tomb, and look at the plan of the entire building, which is absolutely octagonal inside the tomb, and it is covered by the veranda, which is also octagon in shape and covered by a entire huge dome. And on the top of the roof of the octagon, there are small tombs at each angle or each corner. That made it very beautiful and unique in design. Now we are coming to the last period, when the decadence of the political and as well as economic decadence started, and that is the period of the Sayyads and the Lodhis. And here we will mention about the monuments which are very prominent and can be of importance. The best 2 examples of this architecture of the Sayyads are the tomb of Mubarak Shah Sayyad and the Muhammad Shah Sayyad. In plan and outline, these are based on the tomb of Khani Jahan Telangani that we have just mentioned. That means they were octagonal in shape and in plan, but the height of the veranda was increased in case of Mubarak Shah's tomb. The height of the central dome was also raised by placing it on a high drum, and on the roof of the dome were placed the graceful kiosk which was built on the pillars. Finials were added at each angle of the many-sided drum of the dome, while the apex of the dome was crowned by a finial which looks like an arched lantern. The tomb of Mubarak Shah suffers from several basic defects. A perfect symmetry and cohesion between the two parts has been achieved by raising the height of the main dome and also by the pillared kiosk. The novel type of pinnacle was replaced by one of the lotus pattern that we generally call the inverted lotus pattern, and now we can have a look at the tomb of Mubarak Shah and tomb of Muhammad Shah. Both of them are octagonal in shape. Under the Lodhis, the building activity again regained a fairly greater extent. A good number of tombs were constructed along with a few mosques. A considerable improvement took place in case of the Sayyid, over and above the Sayyid style in case of Lodhi period. An enamel or glaze style decoration tended to be richer and more lavish. So this is a tomb of Sikandar Shah which is octagonal in plan, and again it followed the simple Khani Jahan Tilangani style. The tomb of architecture also can be of importance because the tomb of Sikandar Lodhi is almost as same as the Sayyid's tomb. So we are not going to elaborate any further on the plan. Rather, we should say that the interior walls were profusely decorated with polychrome tiles. Unfortunately, here we don't have any photograph of the inside of the tomb. The ceiling is painted in bright colors in manuscript-like design. The tomb is situated within a spacious walls, garden enclosure, and octagonal turrets at the four corners with a gateway on the southern side is also another feature. Here we can also mention about very impressive specimen of this Lodhi period, which are Bare Khan Ka Gumbad. We can go through the photographs. Bare Khan Ka Gumbad, Chote Khan Ka Gumbad, Bara Gumbad, Shish Gumbad, Baghe Alam Gumbad, Dadi Ka Gumbad and Poti Ka Gumbad, and most of these tombs have no walled enclosures. So we can have a quick look of all these tombs, which are again square in style. The Shish Gumbad is octagonal, but Dadi Ka Gumbad and Poti Ka Gumbad are also again square in style, not following the octagonal shape. Therefore, we are coming to the very end of this period, Lodhi period, and we will only mention about one more mosque, that is Motki Masjid, which is regarded as the best of the Lodhi period and considerably large in size. It is in fact the largest mosque of that age. The 5 arches in front of the wall of its prayer hall are all well shaped. The central one, which is enclosed by deeply recessed arch of red sandstone. The color scheme of the building material is also very pleasant. Once again we find red sandstone with marble and colored tile work. A mosque is remarkably similar to Motki Masjid is Sohana in Haryana. Now we can have a look at Motki Masjid, which is the first one is the facade, and then the view from the back side of the masjid and the arched interior aisle of arched aisle. We can have a look, and to summarize the whole thing, we can say that it is marked this period from 13th to 16th century marked the first beginning of the Indo-Islamic architecture. The period covering 3 centuries, it saw the origin of a new genre in Indian architectural history. It combines both the existing architectural features of pre-Islamic period, that is Trabeate, with that of the Central Asian, especially the style of Iran and Afghanistan, which is of arcuate style, and therefore a new style emerged by assimilating the two style, the Trabeate style and the arcuate style, and a considerable amount of development took place over these 3 centuries under the patronage of Delhi Sultans and also under the patronage of regional sultans. Both religious and secular architectures dotted the whole of northern and northwestern part of India, and during the 16th centuries it gradually declined and gave birth to a new style or another style which developed under the Mughals. Whatever we have discussed under this module, that is the architecture of the Delhi Sultanate, if you require further references and for your further reading, you should go and check with the EPG Pathshala, e-text and the glossaries and the references, and that will probably help in developing this module in proper shape. Thank you.